So our tradition insists that before we get to the 12 days of Christmas, there is a time for preparation. And that is the way of things, is it not? That births do not happen overnight. In fact, the gestation period is for a season, and there are unique gifts in that season. And so during this time, every year, we read from two different traditions in our sacred text. We read the poetry that we find in the prophets, primarily in the prophet Isaiah, and then we read these cosmic stories that we know as the birth stories that we need to really kick out of history, all right? We need to kick them out of history. They are not history. They are cosmic history, all right? Or metaphor. So it is the language of poetry and metaphor that accompanies us during this gestation period, because poetry and metaphor are the elements that our tradition uses along with art and music to provide portals to mystery, portals to new beginnings, portals to birth, portals to being raised again and again from death. So, this particular piece of poetry from the prophet Isaiah was, how does poetry show up, right? I mean, how does that happen? It's been raining poetry for me in Advent. I start getting all of these emails from, you wouldn't believe where I get emails from in Advent, and it's poetry. It rains poetry. And where does it come from, I think? And I think, well, it's that same place where music comes from and art comes from. It is that cosmic muse, I think, that then it's our light kind of colliding with the larger cosmic light, and then poetry is born as art is born and music is born and all of that. So this particular piece of poetry arose during a season of the life and the people of Israel where they had been taken out of Jerusalem and marched across the wilderness and into captivity in Babylon. And there's all kinds of theology that we really need to pay attention to there so that we get how cosmic this is. All right? So the people of Israel, and they're just like us. What did they want when they kind of began to empower themselves as a people and a tribe and a nation? Well, they want what every tribe and nation wants. They wanted a little bit of power and recognition, and then they wanted some power and recognition for their political deity. All right? So they wanted a capital city, which was Jerusalem, and they wanted a king, and we know something about that history. And then they wanted a temple, because if they were going to be somebody with a God who was somebody, then that God needed a temple like everybody else's God. And the prophets all along were going, really? You think the mystery can be limited to like 4 walls and a roof? And that temple in Jerusalem very much defined for that community where God was. And we get that, don't we? At the church. So then the empire comes in, raises the temple to the ground, destroys half the city, takes half the people over into Babylon, and you have this group of people in Babylon going, we're here without our God. We're here without our God because our God is in that temple over there that we built for our God. And of course you're all thinking, who thinks like that? Start listening to people talk about their buildings, and you go, oh, we all think like that. So here they are in a foreign land, amongst the foreign people, in their mind, godless, totally abandoned. And then these words arise, all right? So this poetry, coming from both a deeper place and a cosmic place, is meant to help them totally rethink how they understand how mystery is present. And in every season, I think that challenge is never old, ever. We are always challenged to consider how the mystery we call God is breaking into our lives again and again and into our bellies again. So when you listen to this poetry, you have to take it out of time and place. You have to take it out of the Middle East. You have to take it even larger than a small, depressed community in captivity. This poetry needs to land everywhere and arise from everywhere. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. For waters shall break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. A highway shall be there, and it shall be called the Holy Way. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. So I'm going to share some words with you that aren't mine, that show up for me every year at this time. It's Milton Brasher Cunningham, who is a kindred spirit, poet, muse friend of mine. I had to go to New York 2 days in a row this week, which meant the long night was short for me and had to ride the train both ways in the dark. Winter in the Northeast is so much fun. As I walked the chilly streets to get my office building, an old Simon and Garfunkel song crossed my mind. A winter's day in a deep and dark December. I am alone. I had some time before a meeting to read an article about winter by Adam Gopnik, which led me to these words. Human beings make metaphors as naturally as bees make honey, and one of the most natural metaphors we make is of winter as a time of abandonment and renewal. The oldest metaphors for winter are all metaphors of loss. When we took a lunch break from our all-day meeting, I went outside so I could see some daylight and get out of the conference room. The street was packed with people. What I noticed as I walked is how many of them were grouped as they strolled, families, couples, friends, taking pictures, talking and laughing, enjoying the holidays. I know nothing about the people I passed on the street. When it comes right down to it, I don't know many details about most of the folks I work with. I don't mean to imply that we're not colleagues, but our days are filled with things other than hanging out. On the train home tonight, I read through the quotes that I had saved from the article I read this morning and came back to the one by poet David White. The ultimate touchstone of friendship is not improvement, neither of the other nor of the self. The ultimate touchstone is witness. The privilege of having been seen by someone and the equal privilege of being granted the sight of the essence of another. To have walked with them and to have believed in them, and sometimes just to have accompanied them for however brief a span on a journey impossible to accomplish alone. As long as I'm making Simon and Garfunkel connections, how could I not sing these? When you're down and out, when you're on the street, when evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. I will take your part when the darkness comes and pain is all around. The ultimate touchstone is not improvement, but witness. Those words make me hear Jesus differently when he says, "You shall be my witnesses." I was taught that meant I was supposed to go and tell people things. But what if it means go and befriend people? Go and really see them, walk with them, believe in them, accompany them. For whatever time you have on this journey, we cannot make alone. It's not supposed to be about improvement. It's about bearing witness. It's agreeing to be the one who helps others cross through the barren lands of life. It is being the safe place. It is being the temple, the sanctuary for another. In this deep and dark December, Who are your witnesses? And for whom are you bearing witness? Who walks with you and believes in you? Who needs to hear that you see them and believe in them? For whom can you be a bridge over troubled water or a sanctuary in a storm? So that's part one, and I chose those words because the way that it invites us to be witness and present for one another so reminded me of how Gordon has been present for us these 2 years. And so I'll say more about that, and we'll acknowledge that as we prepare to say goodbye to him following the service today. So we're going to fast forward. These cosmic words show up again in Matthew's account of the life of Jesus. You, I think, will recognize them. So John the Baptist is now locked up in prison, all right? But when he gets wind of what Jesus is doing, he sends his own disciples to say, "Are you the one that we have been expecting, or are we still supposed to wait for someone else?" And Jesus told John's disciples, "Go and tell John, this is what's going on." And we've got some more cosmic poetry here. The blind see. The lame walk. The lepers are cleansed. The deaf hear. The dead are raised. And the wretched of the earth discover that God is on their side. This is what Jesus described as the kingdom of heaven. But I think we need to move beyond those words, and I like the words that Martin Luther King Jr. uses, and he names this as the beloved community. And he says the beloved community isn't here or there. It's not a place or a time. He says, in fact, it does not exist. It happens. The beloved community happens when those who are hungry have food or affirmation, or when it happens when bodies that are dying or whose relationships or dreams have died live again in a new way. It happens when those who have been disabled in body or mind or spirit are able to leap and sing with joyful abandon. It happens as those who are pushed aside, kicked out, or treated as lepers were once treated discovered that they are not just welcome, in fact, they are loved. One of the tasks of the beloved community is not just to participate in the healing and feeding and rising from the dead and breaking out of prison, but to bear witness to these things as well. So what is the criteria again for the beloved community happening in our midst? Those who are having trouble walking are given an arm. Those who are sick at heart are given a hug. Those who are isolated because of poverty or mental health or whatever are brought to the table. Those who are drowning in grief are given a healing melody. And so our task that the cosmic poetry calls us to connect with again at this season, as it does in every season, but it's unique in every season, is first of all to be again and again with each person we encounter, the beloved community. And second, to recognize and to name these events as cosmic, as an affirmation of sacred love that is birthed again in every moment, time, and place, where love, the cosmic kind, is born again and again and again.